Ia akan dimulakan pada tahun 2020. Baru-baru ini pun kita ada perbincangan dengan M10. M10 pun bersetuju dengan tayangan tersebut dan Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri melihat program tersebut amat perlu. Dan Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri sendiri melihat contoh di Jepun bagaimana di Jepun telah dimulakan program makanan ini selari dengan dua konsep utama. Pertamanya untuk memastikan anak-anak kita mendapat makanan berkhasiat. Sebenarnya cadangan ini pada zaman
Good evening, welcome to Consider This. I'm Melisa
And I'm Ibrahim Sani.
This is the show that wants you to consider and reconsider the news of the day. So that was the Education Minister, Mazli Malik, announcing that primary school children across the country will be getting free healthy breakfast served daily starting from January 2020. So today the Education Ministry released frequently asked questions, or FAQ, on this initiative. And I guess that answers some of our questions, doesn't it, Ibrahim?
Yeah, some of the things that are contained in the FAQ includes the reason why they want to go for this purpose. They want to provide nutritious food for the students. They want to also target just the primary students. They don't want to target the preschoolers or the high schoolers. They also want to make sure that the rollout is efficient. That's why, again, we raised this yesterday. When you roll out things, it's important for you to roll out with agencies that have done this before.
Exactly.
In this case, it's the Supplementary Food Program people, which is the RMT. So it gives a little bit more color on the mechanism and the purpose of why this is being introduced in schools.
Well, you know, what I didn't know when this program was first announced yesterday, what I didn't realize was it's not just breakfast, right? So it's not just for morning session students. So the program will be provided around 7 to 8:30 a.m. for the morning school sessions. But for the afternoon sessions, they also get free meals between 12 and 4 p.m. It will be served. So kind of an afternoon snack. Now, I'm all for this. So I think Mazli Malik has been under some, I guess, scrutiny for his lack of progress since coming to office. But this is a step in the right direction, don't you think?
But it is in the step in the right direction. I think all kids have a right to good food, and I think there's no better institution other than the school to actually give them the best kind of nutrition, but there have been some backlash. According to one comment piece on Terkini, they say that it would be a waste of funds to provide breakfast for those who have already eaten at home. Some of the comments included, "My child might not like what you serve for breakfast." I think this is a little bit, all high and mighty, don't you think?
It's funny, the kinds of conversations that have come out from the announcement of this proposal. So I have to say, I was quite surprised. A lot of people are saying, listen, exactly, it could be a waste. My child could have eaten at home. Why not just serve for the B40? And I have to say, though, there are unintended consequences if you serve breakfast just for the B40. You could be opening up that child to stigma and bullying.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the idea perhaps is, to provide equal opportunity to all students to have a healthy breakfast, provided that it is healthy and not, the Malaysian breakfast.
I also want to highlight that the purpose of young kids, right, primary schoolers, is to focus on habitual behavior. And in this sense, while you want to inculcate good behavior through studying, through, collaboration with your classmates, open dialogue with your teachers and your friends, also, the most important thing is the soft skills that you want to be creating in terms of habitual behavior. And this includes eating good stuff, not just the jajan that you get from your school, right in front of your school.
And hopefully, instilling kind of good nutritional habits that will last a lifetime and also impact the rest of the family. Because you know what? Malaysian adults have terrible food habits. Only 6% eat enough vegetables, and Malaysian women particularly don't eat enough protein derived from animal sources. There you go.
We'll go to the next news, which is on the G7 in the Amazon. Here we have the French President Macron speaking about the issue.
On respecte votre souveraineté. C'est votre pays, c'est le Brésil, et là-dessus, je vais être très clair. Je n'ai jamais été ambigu. Mais attention, ce sujet de la forêt amazonienne est celui de la planète entière, et donc on peut vous aider à reforester. On peut trouver les moyens pour votre développement économique qui respectent ces équilibres, mais on ne peut pas vous laisser tout détruire.
So that was French President Emmanuel Macron talking about the need for an international response to the forest fires in Amazon in Brazil, which has hit a record number of 74,000 fires this year. That is an 83% increase compared to the same period last year. But then, on the flip side, we have the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, I guess, questioning the motivation behind
Absolutely, because the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, has questioned the motivation behind the pledge of tens of millions of dollars from the Group of 7 nations to help fight raging wildfires in the Amazon. Now, the international pledges made at the G7 summit in France, Biarritz, a nice town apparently, included $20 million from the G7 group, as well as a separate $12 million coming in from a bunch of other countries as well. Here's Jair Bolsonaro negating that particular comment. Let's play this particular clip.
Macron promete ajuda de países ricos à Amazônia. Será que alguém ajuda alguém? A não ser uma pessoa pobre, né? Sem retorno. O que está de olho da Amazônia? O que eles querem lá há tanto tempo?
All right, so that was Bolsonaro saying that, the rest of the world should respect Brazil as a sovereign country, that having this kind of international response to the Amazon fires essentially is creating a colony mindset, or, treating Brazil like a no man's land. What do you think, Ibrahim, in terms of whether or not the fires in the Amazon should be a response specific to Brazil or an international response?
We have to focus on the two statements given by the two presidents. The first statement that was raised by Emmanuel Macron is on the topic of whether or not it's a humanitarian effort or it's a globalized effort. In this sense, Emmanuel Macron was correct. This is a globalized effort. The G7, of all people, must step in to solve the problem. But Jair Bolsonaro was correct as well, because he argued nobody helps other people for free. What is in it for the G7 when they want to help the Brazilian rainforest situation? He says, or he masks it as a sovereign issue, but, should we be more skeptical the way Bolsonaro is?
Well, I completely disagree. I think that the Amazon provides 20% of the world's oxygen. This is essentially the lungs of the earth. And if, we all don't help take care of it, why leave it up to just one country? I mean, it's home to more than half of the world's animal and plant species. So, if these fires continue, we could see some animals become extinct. I think that we need a global, concerted effort when tackling with issues like climate change, like the fires in the Amazon, and for Bolsonaro to, I guess, be quite territorial about it feels a little bit, for me, a step backwards.
Or a selfish move.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just want to ask you one last thing, I suppose, before we go for the break. How do you think this will pan out? Because the money is ready to be given. Somebody doesn't want to get the money.
I'm hoping that Mother Nature will will play her role, but it turns out that I think, according to weather data, rainfall is likely to be weak, and therefore it's not going to help to extinguish the fires raging in Brazil. Apparently, the Brazil government has, I guess, launched some firefighting efforts, but that will only extinguish the smaller blazes. It takes Mother Nature and extreme rainfall to put out the larger infernos. But you know what? We're hoping for the best.
Oh, hoping for the best. Yeah, it's not about half a world away. It's actually the same world that we're living in.
It is 20% of our oxygen, guys. We should be paying attention. All right, we're going to take a closer look at the data-driven policy and how that's made after this on Consider This. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris with Ibrahim Sani.
Yep.
Now, the recent statement made by the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights highlighted the need for more targeted social assistance for the poor in Malaysia. To do this, we should be looking at tweaking current programs or in fact formulating better targeted initiatives. Now the best way to do this is through data-driven policy. So joining us on the line is Datuk Sri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin, Malaysia's Chief Statistician. So good evening, Dr. Uzair. Thank you for joining us. Now, could we begin with you addressing the concerns raised by the UN Special Rapporteur on data collection and transparency? Essentially, he said that it does not appear that important data is being collected or that data available cannot be disaggregated, and that the statistics available are carefully managed and presented in a way that often obscures crucial details. These are some startling allegations. Can you help address them, Dr. Uzair?
Thank you, Melisa. In our statistical system, we follow the system that they are using the manual recommendation and the best practice. And it's very important that every single data we collect, there are purpose for the data collection. And of course, the overall data collection will be used for at least for 5 purposes. One is to evaluate the policy. Second, to identify the key challenges facing by the country and what the data require. And of course, the data we need to collect for us to look at what the opportunity. And also, very important, the data is for us to help to reduce the uncertainty. And of course, the number 5 will be assist to resolve the complexity. On that point, I would like to state that all the data collection, the process, and also the dissemination is really follow the international standard. And every single data we release, we already explain in detail how we arrive at the data. It's very rigorous process, and we consider it very scientific.
Dr. Uzair, coming on the back of the World Statistics Conference, I attended one particular session where it says that no matter how politically sensitive a data is, the role of a data collector, in this case a statistician, must share the data regardless of how politically sensitive the situation is. What is your view on this? Would the requirement or the responsibility of a statistician be there and share all there is to share, despite the political backlash that might come from it?
Okay. Basically, when we do the data collection, there are many types of data collection. One is using the mode of census, where we collect the information throughout the population. For example, the population can be people, the population can be comprised of the businesses. And another mode is through the survey, where we design the sampling who's to be used as our respondent. And the third one is through the administration record, in the secondary data. So all the data we collect normally is used solely for the statistic purposes. And of course, the requirement for the country, we need a very granular data, and we try our best to release the data that can portray for the small area statistics. So it's very important. It's not a look at the national level. We also want to have the data at the sub-national level.
So, Dr. Uzair,
we sharing the data this all for the all user at large. Our user can be the government, for the businesses, and also for the researchers. And also can be local and also the international.
You talked a bit about the data collection, right? So through census surveys and through records. Now,
yes.
using data and statistics, that will help inform policy making. So can you give us a sense of how the data that's being collected is currently being used for the formulation of data-driven policy right here in Malaysia?
I give you an example when we started to collect the data on the poverty and income distribution in 1970. So based on the result of the data collection, we see that the rate of poverty during that time is 49% or close to 50. I mean, every 2% one in the poverty. So based on that information, the government put up a very strong effort in the formulating policy to the Malaysia plan to address the issue. And from that, we continue monitoring the effect of the government policy through the subsequent data collection. And so far, we have released series of measurement, and this data continually being used by the government to evaluate the effectiveness of the policy made by the government. And of course, it will be also using by the researchers.
So exactly, you mentioned the 11th Malaysia Plan. So the government has actually made an official commitment to open data and to embrace transparency.
The data is not only about the income. We also collect data on the economy performance, where the opportunity, where we have the competitive advantage in which particular industry that we see that Malaysia can ahead from the others. So the key challenges I would like to inform here that the data can be looked at the various perspectives, and of course the data on the economy, on the social, and on the demography have to look together. They will connect the dots, because when we're talking about how to bring the country to the new level, we have to look at which particular industry will offer the more high income and also the good return from the sector of production of our people.
Okay, so clearly there is, a good people at the Department of Statistics in Malaysia collecting this data. The question is, how accessible is this data? I mean, given the commitment to open data, how would you, I guess, comment on the progress of the Malaysian government towards the commitment to open data? And in your view, what is the end goal of the open data policy?
If we look at the commitment of the government on the SDG, where we need to monitor on various sectors in 159 goals, we have to compute about 265 indicators. So indicators will be portray where we are and how we can improve and how we can do better. And this has to be reported at the global. And I think it is very clear. In terms of our statistical system of the country is among the best in the world, and we always been used as a reference point for other countries.
No, Jose, I think the more important issue here is also on how we treat data, because we're living in a post-truth era. People might not want to understand data as well as they should. We know that data is supposed to help solve arguments, but does it really solve arguments? Because I can say that, Malaysia is not conforming to the normal B40 numbers. And another guy says, it's your measurements are wrong, our measurements are better. The arguments seem to be perpetuating even further, even when both parties are using statistics here. How do we manage post-truth era when it comes to objective figures like statistics?
If we look at how the statistics portray, it's very important when you make any research or study. You need to focus on what is the objective of the research and what the objective of the data collection. So on that note, I would say that normally when we build out the research question, so we have to really identify our sample using the very scientific technique. So I don't foresee that in our professionalism we really want to portray the real scenario on the ground. So the discipline we always hold when we do our work. So of course in this open era, everyone sometimes they just look at the overall and they don't want to look at more detail. and look at the what is the methodology behind the result of our findings.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Uzair, for your insights on the importance of data-driven policymaking that will, for instance, enable better targeted social assistance, say, for the poor in Malaysia. So joining us on the line right now, we have Christopher Chung, Deputy Director of Research at Khazanah Research Institute. Welcome to the show, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, coming back to the statement made by the UN Special Rapporteur last week on poverty in Malaysia, what was your initial reaction to Professor Philip Alston's statement last Friday and the subsequent response by the Ministry of Economic Affairs?
Thanks, Melissa, for having me on the show. I think the statement itself, for me, it is actually rather comprehensive, given the fact that the Special Rapporteur and his team was actually in Malaysia for only 11 days. For me, it captures quite a broad range of issues. I mean, covering things on the policy upstream side of things, looking at things like poverty measurement to data, microdata issues, and also I think to some of the more downstream on the ground issues of things like orang asli and land rights issues, the conditions of the urban poor in PPR and so on. So I think for me it reflects the kind of broad and very diverse consultation that was conducted, and I think the Special Rapporteur and his team also did quite a good job in terms of citing a lot of the more updated and relevant research in this area, including I think some research and reports by Khazanah Research Institute. And I think the tone that was set as well by in the statement, which sounds urgent and also I think uses some of the strong language, also helps to I think raise the profile and attention on the urgency of the poverty issue. But I think at the same time, because of the strong language that was used, so some choice of words for me, I mean, for example, the whole saying that it is a statistical sleight of hands to sort of characterize the problem of undercounting of poverty in Malaysia.
And the nefarious consequences, I thought that was quite strong as well.
Yeah, but I think it may not be actually accurate in terms of the characterization of the problem, because I think it is more methodological in nature and also in terms of the policy choice. So I think that's I mean the part on the language choice and all that. But I think overall for me it is positive and definitely has raised the kind of attention on poverty that I think we need in the country.
What about the response from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Chris? What did you think about that?
Well, I think for me it's a bit unfortunate because I think it comes across as defensive and to some extent being disconnected a bit from some of the sentiments and realities on the ground, where people do not actually believe in the kind of very low poverty rate that we see today, given their life circumstances, face the cost of living and all that. And I say unfortunate, I think because if you read the statement, actually towards the end, there are certain important points that was highlighted on the fact that the government is actually already reviewing the poverty line at the moment, and the fact that we have moved from income-based poverty line to multidimensional poverty line, and it talks about the kind of allocation that we have for the B40 and so on. But because of the strong defensive language that was used, I think it has diverted attention from the fact that the government is actually already doing something about some of these poverty measures. So for me, that's unfortunate.
All right, Christopher, I just want to check something with you. You wrote an op-ed in the Malay Mail Online titled Poverty in Malaysia, Undercounting the Measure, Overcounting the Target, in which you, I guess, brought up the question, in targeting the B40, the bottom 40 for social assistance programs, we're looking at breadth over depth. Can we run through some of the pros and cons of each type, breadth versus depth?
Well, I guess when we talk about the breadth of coverage, it's the fact that we can sort of reach more people with our social assistance and welfare provision. So, for example, I think one of the pro of this is that when we talk about extending from the poor, which is 0.4%, to the B40, which is 40%, it is actually 100 times larger than the poverty group. So in terms of how we conceptualize social programs for the B40, actually it is targeted at the larger group. And maybe just to sort of visualize for you the number, I mean, you're talking about 2.8 million households, assuming an average household size of 4. That's about 12 million individuals who sort of belong to the B40 category. And that's almost like the size of Selangor, Kuala Lumpur, and Johor Bahru combined. So I think the pro of that is that you're reaching a bigger group of people. But At the same time, when the target group has been expanded, but the fiscal allocation for subsidies and social assistance have not actually kept up. I think because I think the minister himself cited the number of 27.5 billion in 2018, which is actually a drop from about 44.1 billion in 2012. Also, in terms of the share of OPEX, is also a decrease. So what this effectively means is that if we increase the target group without increasing the size of the allocation, mathematically this means that every household will be getting less. That means your subsidy per household will be smaller. And that, I think, is the kind of trade-off that I'm trying to get at when we talk about the breadth versus the depth of coverage. And I think the one, for me, a major concern here is that those who may actually need actually more in need of this welfare provision, those who could be at the lower end of the B40 income spectrum, will be more deprived of the kind of social benefit that is needed to sort of help alleviate their situation. And of course, this is not to deny the fact that I think people who are at the upper end of the B40 or even those who are in the M40 could also be facing pressures of cost of living. But I think the kind of interventions that should be targeted at this group is a little bit different. I mean, we're looking at things like decent jobs, how to include them in the growth process, as opposed to the kind of welfare provision type of social programs that we are talking about for the poor. So I think it's important to sort of distinguish these two.
Thank you so much, Chris. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but this is a very interesting topic in terms of the breadth versus depth of social protection programs, whether it's really targeted to the people that we want to help. So
Let's
the
get
debate.
him in the studio soon.
Sorry?
I want to get him in the studio soon.
That's right. Well, the debate is whether we should spread out our social assistance to the B40 or target it to those who really need it the most. So perhaps the B10 or the B20. You know what? I'm going to continue this conversation focusing on targeted social protection tomorrow. And joining me on the show will be the good folks from the World Bank as well as the think tank ISIS Malaysia. So make sure you join me again tomorrow, same time on Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris with Ibrahim Sani.
There you go.
See you then.
Take care.